Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to be working on a very beautiful dish. I'm going to be showing you how to make a beef biryani. And as usual, I'm your host, Chef Andy. Without further ado, I'll direct you to this side of the table and I'll just introduce the ingredients we'll be working with today. So from the edge here, I've got some cubed potatoes, some beautiful basmati rice, some tomatoes there, a bit of olive oil, a bit of vegetable stock. I've got nice, beautiful steaks there from sirloin. I've also got some chopped red onion. I've got some garlic powder, some tomato paste, some seeded chilies, some plain yogurt, some salt, a nice knob of garlic. I also have a bit of cayenne pepper, a bit of red food color, a bit of garam masala, a bit of mint, a bit of minced ginger. And to the front, I've got some cloves, some star aniseed, some cardamom pods there, some cinnamon sticks, and some fennel seeds. So without further ado, we are going to take a short commercial break. Do take this chance to grab your pens and papers if you're taking notes. And when we come back, we're just going to go straight into it. See you shortly. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For those who are just joining us, if you missed out on the introduction, we are going to be working on a beautiful biryani. I'm going to be bringing a bit of an Arabic touch, a bit of a South Asian touch, so it's more of a very much an infused biryani. It might not appear to be the normal biryani that you're used to, but I'm sure if you definitely try this at home, you will not go wrong. So first thing I'm going to do, we're going to start by grinding our spices. And our garlic, of course, in the pestle and mortar. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to add my cardamom seeds first. Then I'm going to add my cloves. And lastly, my cinnamon and my fennel seeds. And I'll reserve the star aniseed for later. I'm also going to add just a bit of salt. This actually just helps me be able to grind everything together. And last but not least, we're going to be adding also a bit of garlic. So we're just going to break this knob a little bit and we're going to peel it quickly. So I'm just going to show you a nice easy step to peeling your garlic. So first thing you normally do, especially for garlic that's a little moist, for this particular reason I'm showing you this is a very moist garlic. It's a little fresh. So this particularly, it might be a little tricky to peel, but I'm going to show you a technique of how to do so. So all I do is put an incision off the back of the garlic clove and I just turn it inside out and it's as easy as that. So you basically repeat the same technique for all of them. Remember, for most cloves that are a little dry, it's a little easier to do so, but because this is more of a fresh clove of garlic, it's a little moist, and even by pounding it, we might not be able to get the skin off. So I'm going to go with about 4 pieces of clove. Okay, that's just about right. You can get rid of the rest. Right, so into that I'm also going to add a bit of my garam masala. I'm also going to add a bit of my garlic powder. And now all we are going to do is grind those in the pestle and mortar. Be sure to start by pounding your garlic a little bit. All right, just a nice quick crushing. And then to that, I'm going to add my seeded chilies. And I'm also going to add a bit of olive oil. So about a tablespoon and a half, that should do. And all we are going to do now is just crush those together. I personally like to use a pestle and mortar because for one reason, I always manage to get the beautiful essence out of my spices. Second of all, it's a little easier to use and I don't actually waste most of my grounded spices. I will mention something beforehand. For those of you who like to use a food processor, a lot of your spices actually remain on the sides of the container, and most of us actually forget to wipe the sides, which actually has the finest product of them all. So I personally like to use a pestle and mortar because in this particular process you don't actually waste as much as you would with an electric machine. So we're just going to work that into a paste. Just going to try and break up. Right, so it should look a little something like that. So it should be a little bit of a paste. It shouldn't be dry. Remember the particular idea of why I poured a little bit of olive oil in there is because the olive oil allows everything to sit together, and it actually makes it much more easier for me to actually scrape that out of the mortar. Right, so to this end, I'm just going to heat up my big pot here. And as you can see, I've got some water going on the side. So this we're going to be cooking our rice in. Just going to add about a tablespoon of oil. Also gonna add a pinch of salt. And for this particular biryani, I'm going to be doing it a little different. So instead of the regular way that I would just rinse my rice and then rinse it 3 times and go straight into the pot, for this particular one, I'm going to soak my rice for about 10 minutes. So this should give it a bit of time to really absorb the water, and once it goes in there, we're just going to rinse it off. So the particular reason why I'm soaking the rice is just to get the grains to swell up. Remember, biryani is pretty much a dish that has to go unaccompanied with any sauces. So what you're looking for, you're not looking for a very, very dry kind of rice. You're looking for rice that really, really is a little easy to eat. More like what you'd expect from sushi rice, just without the vinegar. All right, so I'll leave my rice to sit right behind us here for a little bit. And I'll just bring you back to the big pot here. So I'm just gonna give a nice drizzle of olive oil, about 2 tablespoons. Now just go in with my red onions. So it's actually important that you do give your onions a bit of time to sweat. Really let them extract the juices. And to that, we're actually now going to be going in with our grounded spices here. So this, for those who are just joining us, I added into the pestle and mortar a bit of cardamom pods, a bit of cloves, a bit of fennel seeds. I also added a bit of cinnamon sticks. And now I'm actually going to add the star aniseed as it is. Remember, spices, particularly this size, you want to throw them in whole because it's a little easier to take them out when you've actually managed to get all the flavors out of it. So I'm just gonna drop that in there, and then I'm just going to spoon out the rest of the mixture we had earlier. All right. So very, very important that you actually be stirring your pot while you continue. Remember, your spices are just starting to infuse. You're just trying to extract the aromas. And remember, the moment you let them fry and you don't stir your pot, you're actually exposing your spices to getting burnt. And what happens is you get a bitter taste instead of getting the sweet aromas from everything all together. So actually adding a bit of olive oil to your pestle and mortar while you grind, very, very safe technique to actually make sure that when your spices go into the pot, they're not just going to burn immediately because they're dry, they're now a little moist. So it actually allows them to really just infuse with your red onions and your oil in the pan. Right, so while that cooks, I'm just going to show you how to cut the steak. So I'm working with a nice, beautiful lean sirloin. Particularly for biryanis, a lot of techniques, or rather a lot of different cuts of meat have been incorporated. For the more prestigious kind of serving, you'd probably go with a fillet steak. But if you're looking at cutting cost, you can actually go with beef chucks, which means you're basically getting the unofficial cuts. This is basically any cut that's not particularly from the thigh or from around the spine or from the sides of the cow. So this could actually be even the underbelly. And remember, it still gives a good taste to them. It actually still gives a good finishing to the dish. It's just that it will cost you a little less if you get a cut that's not as prime as fillet steak or sirloin or anything in that relation. So I'm just going to show you how to cut the meat. And I first start by going lengthways. And then all I do is I'm actually going to be cutting across the grain. So I'm just going to cut it at an angle. So as you can see, my knife is a little tilted. And I'm just going to go right through the sides like that. Remember, if you're going to be serving this to adults, you really want the portions of meat to be nice and chunky. You want them to look generous. And it does also give an appeal to your meal. So I'm just going to quickly cut those steaks up. Remember also to always pay attention to your pot. Don't let your mixture cook too long. Don't let your onions brown too long. And remember, we're just about infusing it. We don't really want to brown the onions too much. Remember, biryani is about building flavors. And it's not very similar to the way you'd be doing a curry. Right, so for this particular dish, I decided to go with sirloin because I did find a beautiful cut of sirloin at the butcheries. The seasons that have gone past have actually been having a bit of issue getting really lean meat, but for the reason that we managed to get some really good lean meat, remember, the leaner the meat, the healthier option you get. So this is actually, I will actually be able to show you, if you can be able to look at the meat just by looking at the sides, you can be able to just see you can see the bit of marbling on the side there. You can see there's almost zero fat. And as you can see, I haven't actually lost anything from trimming. So this is actually one of the best cuts you could always work with. But as I mentioned, ladies and gentlemen, if you are trying to save cost, if you're not trying to be fancy or trying to impress anyone, do pick a cut of beef that works well. Your butchers around, if you do go to a trusted butcher, they will be able to recommend some good meat that you can work with. All right, very simple. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to take the spices out of my pot. Remember, I've just infused them. And if I have to brown the meat at this stage, I might overcook my spices. So at this stage, I'm just going to take them out. And we're going to be incorporating that later. So now I'm just going to turn up the heat on the pot, and I'm just going to add my chunks of meat. Remember the beautiful thing about browning your meat with nothing in the pan. First of all, you're actually able to extract more juices out of it. Second of all, you actually eliminate the risk of burning your spices or rather overcooking them, which of course would actually turn your biryani into a very, very bitter taste, which might not be to your liking. So we're just going to brown the meat now. And as I always insist, as I said, we are cooking it at high heat. So you do want to continue constantly mixing that. Right, so while that continues, we're just going to rinse off our rice. So remember, this has been sitting in water, and as you can see, the grains are just nicely looking all swollen up. Remember, I've only soaked this for about 10 minutes. I don't recommend that you soak it any longer than that. And all I'm going to do now, just give it a bit of a rinse. And I'm just going to pour it through my strainer. And be sure not to leave any rice in your container as well. Be sure to actually try and get as much of it as you can. Please try not to waste. Right, so easy peasy. So I'm basically going to discard the remaining water. And I'm just gonna give my rice a few seconds to just drain the excess water. And as for your meat, I insist, please continue mixing. Remember, the pan is on high heat. It's very, very easy to actually overcook, or rather over brown your meat. So the constant mixing technique is actually just going to allow you to get an even brown coating all over. Okay, so we're gonna let the meat brown for about another 4 to 5 minutes. And now to the pot on the side, remember there I had some water that was boiling. I added just a bit of salt and a bit of oil. And I'm just going to add my rice now. Right, and remember it's always crucial that you give your rice a bit of a mix. This is just to make sure that your grains don't stick together. So I'm just going to give that a quick mix, and I'm gonna turn the heat a little higher. So remember, ladies and gentlemen, biryani is very much a dish that requires a bit of building up. And what happens is, because it's a dish that you're building up, it also entails that you cook some of the ingredients separately. And actually, before we actually serve it, I will show you what happens to the rice and how we are going to incorporate it into a biryani altogether. Right, so as our meat continues browning, we're going to take a short commercial break. I do ask you that if you're going to refresh yourself, please do so now, because when we come back, you don't want to miss what you're going to be doing next. So see you after a short break. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For those who are with us just before the break, we took a short commercial break and we were browning some beautiful sirloin steak here. And we also are cooking some rice. So this is about 3/4 way cooked. I'm just going to take it off the heat now, and we are going to rinse it off. Although we are going to continue with our biryani. And our meat is now nice and browned. All I'm going to do now is add the masala we made earlier, which was the spices, onions and garlic and some chili. And now I'm just going to add my dry spices. So I've gone in now with some coriander powder. I'm now going to add some chili powder. And then I'm going to add my ginger and my garlic powder. And last but not least, tomato paste. So we're just going to let that continue cooking a little bit, just to make sure we don't get any burn in there. I've got some stock here just to deglaze the pan. I'm going to turn my heat back to high. Right, so for those who were with us just before we took the break, remember we hadn't rinsed the rice. And now that's what I would like to do now. So very crucial that you have your sieve again. And all I'm going to do is transfer the rice into my sieve. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so basically the idea why we are rinsing our rice, this is to just stop it from overcooking. Remember, we are going to add it into the pot and it's still going to be cooking with all the other ingredients. So it's particular that you cook it about 3/4 way, so that when it goes into the pot, remember your meat is gonna be cooked, your sauces are gonna be cooked. And basically that will just give you an allowance of about maybe 4 to 5 minutes just to have your rice just to steam all the way through. Right, so I'm just gonna leave my rice behind there, and I'm just gonna allow that to drain. And I'm just going to bring your attention back to this side. So as I mentioned, very, very simple biryani making technique. Nothing difficult about it at all. I'm just going to add my stock in there. So beautiful aromas coming in. If you can be able to zoom into that, you can probably be able to see it's now looking nice and saucy. That is definitely what you're looking for. So a biryani mixture should not be too dry, it should not be too wet. It should just have enough color and enough, just thick enough. Remember, we are going to be incorporating the rice into the same pot, but you do want the sauce to be just rich enough for you to be able to have it as one dish, and it should not be too dry. And remember, as I said, biryani is something that you'd consume as a one-pot cooking kind of dish. So remember, the only thing you could probably add to this is a beautiful salad just to serve, which is what I'm going to show you now. So I'm going to be making a very, very simple and easy kachumbari. And all I'm going to do is just going to quickly slice my onion. Right, I'm just going to slice my onion really thin. So very, very simple and light salad that you can serve on the side with your biryani. I like to make this while I'm actually cooking, because I don't want my juices to all disappear. It just gives it a good enough amount of time for the juices and everything to incorporate. So to the onions, we're going to be incorporating some tomatoes as well, which I'm now going to show you how we are going to do that. And particularly for a salad like this, I prefer to have my seeds out, but this necessarily doesn't mean throw away everything. You could always reserve this and use it much later. So I'm just going to take my seeds out quickly. So one thing I would recommend when you're making a salad, and particularly one just like an African kachumbari or a salsa, taking out the seeds does allow for the salad to be a little fresher and a little more tastier. Remember, tomatoes do carry quite a bit of water, and if you have all your seeds and everything mixed in there together, what would happen is you'd have all your flavors sinking to the bottom, and you'd have a tasteless salad on the top. So it's actually particular that you have your mixture not too wet, not too dry, and this will actually allow you to get a very, very good salad out of it, okay? So for the tomatoes, I'm just going to slice those thinly. So I'm just going to make a very, very rough salad. Remember, you can also bring in your own techniques. You can make your own improvisations. If you're thinking of serving it with a green salad, it's also very allowed. And as I said, I particularly like to have a nice, fragrant, fresh salad, because remember, your dish is already very, very rich in flavors, and you're not trying to add anything to it. You're just trying to bring something more like a palate cleanser, something that should just allow you to clean your palate and just give you a refreshing taste in between your meal. All right, so to that, we're just going to move everything to a big bowl in front of me. Very simple, as I said, very simple and easy salad. You can all be able to make this yourselves. So I'm just going to add my mint in there. And to that, I will also be incorporating just a little bit of apple cider vinegar. And last but not least, a bit of olive oil just for flavor and for color. And all we are going to do is give that a quick mix, and we're just going to let that sit on the side. But before I do so, it's always handy to have a bit of pepper in there. Right, so easy peasy. You could always just let that sit on the side, or you could rest it in your refrigerator. But because we are going to be serving this immediately, I'm not going to chill it. I'm just going to serve it at room temperature. Okay. Okay, so our biryani sauce is really looking nice now. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to add my cubed potatoes. I'm just going to give that a quick mix. All right, very, very simple technique. Now I'm going to show you how we actually layer the rice, and I'm just going to do that now. So remember, as I mentioned earlier, a biryani is very much a dish that you'd probably serve, you'd probably make way ahead of time, or you'd probably start it way ahead of time. Remember, if you're going to be serving a biryani, you're probably not going to try and rush this and make it in a span of an hour before dinner. You do want to give it a bit of time. Oh, smells lovely. Right, so I'm just going to grab my rice, and I'm also going to grab one of my bowls here and a bit of the food color. So I'm just going to grab some water quickly. And what we're basically going to do now is we're going to dissolve some of that orange food color into the water here. Remember, this is going to give the biryani that beautiful yellow fragrant color we always love to look at. So I would say I used about maybe 1/4 teaspoon for this particular mixture. And remember, food color goes a long way, so please be very careful when adding color to your food. Don't add too much. It's always safer to go with about 1/4 teaspoon. It always gives a nice rich color, but anything half a teaspoon going up, it might overcolor your dish and it might look a little strange even to your guests. Very simple. We're just going to give that a quick taste just to take for seasoning. I do recommend, before you actually start assembling the dish for the final stage, it's always handy to taste the food. Always make sure the seasoning is right. Yeah, we definitely need a bit of salt in there. So coming from the dish, very, very nice and fragrant, not too spicy. The flavors are just in there. You can actually be able to almost taste everything that we added into it. The garlic really stands out because it came in a little earlier. The ginger just incorporates all the flavors because we added it a little later. The cardamom, the fennel, the aniseed, everything. You can actually be able to smell everything off the side of the pot there. Just one thing, yeah. So I'm now going to show you the last technique of how to assemble your biryani. And it's a very, very simple technique. So remember, the rice was 3/4 way cooked. And now we just rinsed it under cold water, and we're just going to now layer that on top of our dish. Just always make sure not to have any excess water in there before it goes in. And all I'm going to do is cover the top of my bowl, and I'm going to be using a slotted spoon for that. I'm just going to spread that around. Very, very simple. And now, last but not least, we're gonna go in with our food color. So I particularly don't like to pour it all at once in the center, so I like to go zigzag right through the dish. Just kind of allows the dish to just get an even good spread of coloring all around. Right, simple as that. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to cover that. And I would normally finish this off in the oven, but particularly for this reason, there's not too much of it in the pot. I'm just going to let it finish off on the pot here. Remember, the rice has been pre-cooked, the meat is ready. So this should give you about a nice good 10 minutes. You can always now start cleaning your kitchen at this stage. You can go rush and check on your kids, set the table, and come back and your biryani will be ready. So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to go straight into serving the dish. See you after a short while. gentlemen, welcome back. We took a short commercial break and now we're done with the dish and I'm just about to show you. So this is now done. I'm just going to turn off the stove. So this has been now, we remember we had pre-cooked the rice, we made our biryani mixture, we layered it and finished it off with a bit of a drizzle with water and food color mixture. Now this has been cooking for a little bit. I cooked it covered. You do also have the option to finish this in the oven if you do want to stretch it over a bit of time if you're cooking it, but if you're making it in a small quantity, I recommend the stove will do just fine. So we're now just going to take the lid off. Oh, smells lovely. Right, so this is now done. I'm just now going to give it a mix. So I'm just going to show you what it looks like as it is now. So you can see you got a bit of the white and a bit of that orange. It's just scattered all over. And now all I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my spoon and just work it all the way to the bottom and then just flip the mixture over. I'm just going to keep doing the same thing just to get a nice consistency to it. Right. Right, so that's done. We're now just going to go straight into plating it. I personally like to use a bowl when I'm plating because it actually enables me to get a bit of a beautiful portion out of it. So this particular size bowl will probably serve 2 kids or 1 adult. You could alternatively serve this the old-fashioned way, the old Arab way. Actually, the way they used to serve it on a big stainless steel pan, and they would actually do that if they were eating it communally, but because we're only doing this for presentation, I'm just going to serve it on a plate as usual. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab my show plate. And all I'm going to do is cover it over the top like that, and I'm just going to flip it around. And all we're going to do now is lift the bowl. And then I'm just going to finish that off by serving that with a nice beautiful salsa here with a bit of mint. So as I said, a lot of variations and techniques to making a beautiful biryani. A lot of recipes out there as well. So do take your time to do a bit of research before you stick to your best recipe. I always insist practice makes perfect. Try a few before you actually get the best one. As the saying goes, you do have to actually put a bit of effort into anything before you can actually achieve perfection. So I would probably just serve that with a nice beautiful salad on the side like that, and a nice portion of plain yogurt, and last but not least, a nice beautiful sprig of mint on the top, and this would just basically just go onto the table like that. So ladies and gentlemen, as I was explaining to you earlier, a lot of variations to a biryani. Do take your time to try your own techniques, do your own variations, find your taste, find your comfort zone, and stick with it. It has been a pleasure being with all of you today. My name is Chef Andy, your host. You have been tuned into BrandPlus TV. You've been watching Dinner Guide. I do also insist that you do leave your comments, enquiries, or any questions on our Facebook page. We will get back to you. And until the next episode, have a lovely evening.